Hey folks, this is Ben Gessel. How's it going? Um, just a kind of late night video here. I know exactly what I'm talking about here. Exactly. And I think it's a fairly misunderstood subject. It is a misunderstood subject. I can't even talk right now. This, what I'm talking about, is a little bit misunderstood. I'll put it away. It's not always fully understood even by people that can do this very well. So, what am I talking about here? Well, I've mentioned something called free association before. Uh, Free association is where you take something and compare it to something totally unrelated. And there are some free associations that are a little bit more useful with imaginative kinds of things. For instance, a really easy or dumb free association, or just something that's might not seem very of much of worth, is that, oh, a carrot and an orange are both orange, but the carrot doesn't taste as sweet as the orange. Different shapes and everything. So if you see a carrot, you might be reminded of, oh, I want to have an orange because the orange color. Well, that's a really basic one. But you could, looking at shapes, in fact, you could look at a pointy triangle, kind of thing, versus a circle. And you could say the pointy triangle looks like a sword, or it looks like it's going to stab something. The circle kind of looks like it would be like a cookie or something. It's. So might have these different emotions, based on seeing different shapes. Whereas the circle might be more welcoming. The pointy triangle might be more of a, don't hurt me, or what's going, I don't want to be stabbed. So, some of you know this already. So I have Asperger's syndrome mildly, only to a mild extent. There are people, not just with Asperger's syndrome, but only some with Asperger's. I don't know. It just varies. Everybody varies a little bit in this area, what they're good at. But there are people that make free associations all the time. Kids tend to do this a lot. Some kids more than others. And it's something that is not practical. It's not a attribute. It's not something that helps you with organizing your time better. It doesn't help you finish your homework faster. Well, 99.9% of the time. If you're writing a story for your English class, if it's like creative writing, I think the free association stuff, and it's like the brainstorming, that's definitely going to help. But if you're doing most anything else, a lot of other things, it's not going to help so much. So some people do this more than others, and we tend to do this more when we're little, and again, it's something that's very. We sometimes wonder what is it. What is it to be imaginative? What does that mean? Well, it means, comes from image, and then, well, I have to look up the word a bit more, but it's coming up with something that hasn't been created before. Your the word creative is, where there's create, and imagination, there's an image in your mind. So you might have vivid images in your mind. Where do they come from? Well, they can come from a lot of kinds of sources. We're not always sure where thoughts or images come into our mind, where they're always, sources of them. But again, some of us do this just more naturally than others. Um, and yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this this process from a few different angles. One is music composition. The other one is creative writing, or also generating ideas for, say, video games and other projects like that. And another one's art. And yeah, actually, it's just, I'm going to look at those three. It's a music composition, creative writing of some sort, and art. Um, so when you're writing music, there's all these different melodies you can create. If you just kind of, you've written a lot, the more melodies you write, the more it just come to you. You just write a pretty good melody, decent melody. You know how it works. You're not worried about it sounding just like something else that's already been written, because usually melodies tend to distinguish themselves after a few bars at least, you know, or a few notes at least. So there's kind of a question of why are you writing something? Nobody's making you write something, right? Maybe sometimes, in some cases, it's a job that you have, so you have to write something. So that's a different situation. But most of the time, when you're composing, um, it's not something you have to do. At least in my life, if it is, again, it's like a job. But even so, the process can be somewhat similar. It probably is in a lot of cases. Um, but the question is, are you composing something based on something that's already being made, or made like a movie, or you have images, ideas already in your mind, something that you want to base your composition on, or not? If it's nothing, it's just pure melody and harmony. Have to be some kind of internal dialogue of some sort. There's some kind of rhyme and reason that reasons for writing something that you maybe did never divulge to the world. Whatever it is, you want to be really cryptic about it. If you want to be really whatever the thought process is, only you're aware of it fully, and it has to mean something to you. It has to, if you do something that is something you don't have to do, I would think that if you put a lot of time and effort into something like a composition, that means a great deal to you. Um, so, for me, when I compose music, there's definitely a lot of free association. There's a lot of free association going on, but it isn't necessarily always at the music. But when you hear music, listen to music, and you're reminded of something. It's interesting because a lot of times that doesn't have anything to do with the title. But the title might suggest something, and okay, sure. I'm terrible with titles myself. Uh, it's always a question of, do compositions actually need a title? Depends on the piece, I suppose, but it's a really valid question, because music exists apart from anything else, and it's just, it's very, something we talked about before with composition and things, but composition masterclasses, but trying to. Sorry, I'm just thinking here. So the way I write music oftentimes involves free association, but I have made connections between harmonies and different elements of music, and emotional things, many other things as well. I have a language that works for me, or I have an understanding of music such that I can write immediately to express any mood, any culture, any time period, anything I want to. Colors, it's all I understand music that well. You know, it's and some folks just can do that very well. Others is harder, and that's okay. We're all different. We all have different qualities. But I tend to use free association in a way when I'm composing. Um, but outside of the music itself, um, I've always been drawn to bright colors or to complementary colors or to landscapes or certain kinds of images that are interesting enough to me aesthetically or suggest something spiritually or emotionally or something. You know, sometimes it's the image that I'm curious about. For instance, there's a kind of a haunted painting I still think about it. It's the hands that resist him. It'd be interesting to write a piece of music based on that painting. For goodness sakes, that'd be dark. But I know that would be a flippin' dark, scary piece of music if I wrote it. Holy crap! I'd probably be petrified and wanting to write in the daytime or something ridiculous like that. But but the thing is, I don't know, like music is very emotional. It's very powerful. I've always appreciated music more that has more of an emotional quality about it, or something that can be similar to emotion. And I don't detest music that's devoid of emotion, but I think that I'm not too far away from that kind of feeling. It just seems like such a waste, you know, taking one of the most beautiful things we have and taking the life out of it. I feel pretty strongly about that, but I don't, you know, you can have very, very dry music. It can still have emotional substance. Just might not be a whole lot of it. Anyway, so free association is very much part of music composition for me. It's something I just naturally do. I don't even think about it. It's just something that I just do. I've always done it, and with creative writing, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you're gonna write something, especially in the fantasy kind of genre, but a lot of other things that are along those lines, you've got to be doing some pretty serious. If you're creating a fantasy world, everybody knows about dragons and unicorns and elves and dwarves, and if your story just, you know, oh my gosh, the unicorn lost its horn, or you found a horn, you have to find the unicorn who lost its horn and give it back to him. I'm being kind of silly. Maybe I'll think of a slightly better plot idea. You have a good dragon, but the good dragon is surrounded by bad dragons, and he wants to find other good dragons. So, how do you help the good dragon find other good dragons? I'm being a little bit silly still here. Maybe it's a little more creative idea, but oh my gosh, it needs a heck of a lot of work. Or maybe just abandon the idea altogether. Sometimes the best ideas for stories come about from free association, where you connect one thing to another unrelated thing. So, let's just take for a second something like, I don't know. How about a shepherd's staff and a wizard's staff? So, you could have a story where a boy, learns to be a shepherd from an older shepherd, and he thinks he's just a regular shepherd. Like there's nothing special about him. They're poor, and the older shepherd, one day starts teaching him stuff that is related to the staff, the shepherd staff that he never knew he had. Oh my gosh, we're wizards, right? So maybe that's a little bit easier connection to make. But I mean, there's a lot of things like that, like balloons. They float, right? They help you float. What about different colors of balloons? It might have different effects. And let's say, just as a story idea, a boy is the boy in the red balloon. I know the French movie, but let's say a boy finds a balloon that's like multicolored or it's very noticeably really beautiful, and the balloon takes him somewhere. Where he takes him, the boy doesn't know, but he trusts the balloon. And from there, you can just, I don't know, you can go a lot of different directions with that. But if you feel like you're going somewhere, and it's like the balloon would be magical because you need a lot of balloons to lift up a boy. So if it's just one of them, that's a pretty amazing balloon. You know, something's going on there. But not hot air balloon's different, of course. Yeah. So you need, free association is a really good thing to have when you're being creative, and of course, obviously with the arts, that's visual art. I mean, but architecture, that sort of thing. Free associations come into play very, very easily right there as well. And the music and art thing is a very easy, music to art, art to music. If you're making connections between harmony and color, for instance, that's a free association. Because major seventh or minor seventh, as beautiful as they are, even though they might remind me of like purple colors or dark green or something, the colors and the harmonies are still very distinct things. But to me, they from what does it suggest to my mind when I hear certain harmonies? Well, suggests certain colors like purple. Depending on, of course, how high or low the pitches are and things. But the bittersweet nature of a seventh chord, a major seventh or minor seventh in this case, bittersweet nature. It's a major minor chord combined. It's kind of like combining red and blue. Red is a little bit more cheerful. Blue is a little bit more somber, sad. So you get purple. But it's these are not things that are logical. Free associations are by its very nature. They kind of defy logic in a way, or it's just a different way of thinking. And some people just think it's not very much worth, or there's an attitude about that that's I've always disliked intensely. Because, I'm not sure why, but if you're designing a key, right, for a lock, or to designing a lock, or so there's a lot of kind of things going on with all that stuff. It's gonna be pretty. I think probably a little bit more left-brained, a little bit more. It's not like really. You're talking about just shapes and things, right? And mechanical. You stick your key in the lock, and it does this, and So, but when you're talking about something that's going to interest people, to help them get out of their everyday lives that are kind of feeling in a rut, or so if you're talking about movies, talking about art, talking about music, you're talking about all these kinds of things, it often involves free association. And so the funny thing is that people hunger for it. They look for it. When they know that they found something that's really truly intriguing in this respect, then they just love it. I think it's the most amazing thing. Think how many movies there are being made right now that are devoid of free association. Often movies don't have a whole lot of that to begin with, depending on the type of movie. But it's just this is the thing that's one of the biggest things that's missing with movies and video games. It makes me not want to see or play any of that stuff. Is that there's no free association going on, very little of it. And if I had any one critique for all those guys and all that stuff going on, it's that. Look, Roald Dahl, when he made Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, he was able to make those free associations. Maybe not as well as many, but he was able to do some. So, and this is like, we think he's the most amazing, has the most amazing books, and he does. But you could do so much more than what Roald Dahl did. As an example of free association, well, he was a little bit more into, I think, kind of like Lewis Carroll, using words, kind of being punny, right? Anyway, or the scene in the original Willy Wonka where Willy Wonka throws a shoe in some juice or something, some kind of liquid he's making, and the guy says, What'd you do that for?" And he says, "Gives it a little kick," right? And so that's kind of a double meaning of the word. So sometimes literature's like that. You can kind of use double meanings and things for humorous effects or whatever else. Yeah, but it's also a little bit like thinking outside the box in a way. So again, it's more literary. It's language. It's a different kind of thing, but it's also, I think, connected with free association because, and humor is like this too. If you want to be a good comedian, and you want to be a highbrow comedian, especially, you don't want to tell a bunch of sex jokes and stuff. You, you, good comedians that are clean are very familiar with free association. They should be, right? Well, the simple idea of, oh, that guy has orange hair, red hair, so he looks like a carrot, So, maybe you would come up to the guy and say, "What's up, doc?" That's more of a teasing, mocking thing. But if you're gonna make a connection between someone who has orange hair and a carrot, that's free association. And it can be funny when somebody actually looks like a carrot if they're really, slender. Maybe you have, I don't know. So, but no, it's funny because, and you don't want to take yourself too seriously, or the whole potato head idea, right? Someone has brown hair. I call my brother potato head before. They have kind of a fat jaw, but they have a skinnier top of their head, and they have brown hair, or even whatever it is, we're talking about on some level of free association. When you have, I remember there was a college professor I had at BYU. He was very short and he had black hair, and he was a music composition professor, and so I was always thinking about we're talking about modern notation and writing in rests and things. I'm like, oh, this guy looks like a whole rest or half. He looks like a whole or half rest, right? Because he has black hair. It's kind of cut a certain way. It looks like a whole rest. So, but that's a free association thing. You wouldn't think about those things, really, unless that's Anyway, some people just don't, and when someone has a hard time doing that kind of stuff, it doesn't come naturally to them. They're going to have a hard time being creative or humorous in that respect. They're going to have a hard time thinking outside the box. And so in my life, that's what I've done a whole lot, in the past. I've been seeking for things to help me be, seeking for ideas, more creative ideas. That's what, I'm doing that a lot. And in music, there's a lot of great melodies, work harmonically and all these things, but sometimes that's not really what I think is most interesting or intriguing or music. It's not the kind of music I'm always most fascinated by. Music I'm most fascinated by sometimes, it seems to touch on getting at these, obviously, colors, unique colors, something about it that, if I hear music I haven't heard before, or the style is different, or something about it's different, I take note. But it can also sound still very, and there's a lot of music that can be somewhat similar to stuff I've heard before that I still enjoy immensely. But it's just, again, we're talking, if music is very formulaic, or if it sounds, what I'm trying to say is, to wrap everything up here, is that there's a connection between, I think, a lot of times how people are creative or humorous or can think outside the box or think in different ways, and like free association. And again, something that's just comes very naturally to me, and it's also something that a lot of folks will try to make light of or won't take very seriously. But it's the thing is that if you don't take it seriously, or if you think you hear what's involved with free association, you say, "Oh, that's just what kids do, right? Okay, but what about that book you just read? You know, what if your dad you just read your kids a book where the wild things are? Now, how in the devil could Mari Sendak come up with the idea of, well, just talk about the way he drew the monsters. If Murray Sendak was scared sometimes of his grandparents, the big hairy, you know, uncles, Jewish, whatever, big dark beards, very hairy guys, and he saw this, he knew but he knew that they were loved ones, but he was still scared by how hairy they were, and so that was one of the main reasons why the monsters looked the way they did in Where the Wild Things Are. But I mean, like, what if we were to read the same story? So when we read the story, we get that kind of emotion from him. We can kind of feel a little bit of how he felt. There's like certain colors, they're associated with houses in the evening as well. You see sometimes it's Bread and Jam for Francis, Arnold Lobel. You see the darker colors, or the grays and the blues and the browns. They might want to help you go to bed, but they maybe make you a little bit scared or something. Whatever it is, there's a certain feeling that you get. And what if we read Where the Wild Things Are, but instead of Mari Sendak's illustrations, really hairy monsters and everything, instead of that, it was uh, just very strong looking, big monsters with sharp teeth. So you see the muscles, or you see them flexing their muscles, or their very big arms and legs, and they look tough and mean. Cool, but like just drawing them solid colors, or you make them kind of boxy shoulders, or whatever. But if you draw monsters but they don't have a lot of character or personality, they're kind of forgettable. If you draw monsters that have pig faces and horns and hooves, then okay, that's starting to look a little bit more evil, depending on how you do it. But this free association thing, it's something that is very, I want you guys to think about this very, very, very intently. Anybody who's really done things that are truly imaginative and noteworthy and really affect people, those folks they've done those things in the arts and other things like that, creative writing and music. They have. I say we. I can include myself in this area. We have this quality, being spontaneous, being spontaneous imaginatively. Yeah, coming up with things that maybe haven't really been thought of as much before, put down on paper as much. That is a amazing skill, in my opinion. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but it's. I mean, we see Dr. Seuss versus Sedak versus Arnold Lobel versus any other illustrator. We say these are all these different styles of illustration. And how did we get all those different styles where people had to think? People had to think about, what it was in their minds first. But where did that come from? Well, it came from their lives, observing things in their lives, came from thinking about those things, came from their dreams, came from all kinds of stuff. We don't know always where it came from, but it means something. It should, when we read this stuff, when we hear this music, we watch, we see art, it's different. It means something to us. Some things stay with us, and I just, it's interesting that some people just don't value that very much. This is so if someone makes a movie or writes a piece of music or writes a story or creates a work of art, but it's not that process of going through stuff that's unrelated to something that's unrelated, or if I can tell if somebody hasn't really thought through what it is they're doing, or it's you can tell when something is really interesting when it just isn't. And as much as someone wants to, be seen as creative, if that isn't going on, well, they're just not very creative, in my opinion. But there's skill, there's creativity. It's different. All right. I think I've talked about this about. You get the idea of what I'm talking about. It's getting a little late, but hopefully this is an interesting video. Leave me your thoughts and comments below. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.